Okay, so here you have this guy, Gregory Scarpa, who's a hitman for the Colombo boss at the time, Persico,
Yep.
and you're sleeping with his wife,
hmm
and actually, he gave you permission.
Yes. What happened was at the beginning when I didn't know who he was, I didn't feel that overly that sense of betrayal or that I was doing something so horribly wrong. Not that it was right. But as I got closer to him and he started doing things for me, putting me in businesses and helping me earn money and becoming my friend, now I felt that. I felt like I was not a good friend. I was doing something wrong. I felt guilty. And Linda saw that and it started affecting our relationship. I would not go there as much. I was trying to sort of keep my distance. I was getting paranoid too, because now I knew who he was. And he saw that. And ultimately, they must have had some kind of conversation. And he sat me down one day and told me that, and let me walk you through this because it's a pretty scary moment in my life. I would go to the club with him every day about 12:30. We would get there first, and the rest of the men would come around 1 o'clock. So while we're driving there, and something just happened that I was really, really a nervous wreck. He had called me to bring him downtown to see one of the other captains, Scappy, and I didn't show up to bring him. I convinced myself that he was going to kill me that night. So I didn't go. Linda called my house all night. I heard he was calling me and getting messages on the old messages you used to get on the phone. So that next day when I went, he knew I was really off. My stomach was not right. And he starts telling me that, Larry, I'm going to have this conversation with you. Uh, you're very mature for your age. I know Linda loves you. I love you. I know how you feel about Linda. And as he's going, my stomach is turning because I know what he's leading to. And I've said this a few times, and I'll say it now too. That I always had in the back of my mind that he would try to convince me to admit it, and I would never give in. Just like out of The Godfather, if you remember that scene with Michael Corleone telling him, "Just don't insult me. Tell me you did it, and I'll let you live." So I remember driving there and saying this in my head: "I'm not going to admit it. I'm not going to admit it." Anyway, we get to the club, we walk in, we sit down at the desk, and he's continuing. And he's saying, "What I'm about to tell you, I want to leave. It has to stay between us. But I know what's going on with you and Linda." So my heart almost jumped out of my chest. But for some reason, something told me in my head, this is my moment of truth. I loved her. I didn't want it to end, but it is what it is. Okay. So I looked at him and I says, "Greg, I have a lot of respect for you. And I think you're far from an idiot, but only an idiot wouldn't see what was going on." He busted out laughing. He gets up, comes around the desk, puts his arm around me. We walk outside together. Now we get to the front and we go lean on the parking meter. There's a parking meter there that we would lean on a lot, and the sun's hitting us. And he's explaining to me that he's okay with it, but nobody else outside the three of us can ever hear about it. Because if that happens, the two of us will be killed. So that's the first rule I learned. Not formally, but that was one of the rules that was being broken already. And later on, as I got closer to him, I was introduced to his first wife, who lived in Lakewood, New Jersey. And I was told about his third wife, who lived in Vegas and Manhattan. She was a wealthy socialite, and there's a whole story there too between uh, how they all became wealthy through her, or added to the wealth. But in hindsight, I wonder now if I was just making his life easier. He had all these wives to deal with. Now, he was 20 years older than Linda. He was in his 50s, early 50s. She was around 31, whatever. And I was younger. So when he was out with his other wives, which is 4 or 5 nights a week, bouncing around, I was with her. She didn't complain. So that's one of my theories as to how he allowed it.
Okay, and Greg's story is really interesting because I guess before you guys ever met,
Mhm.
uh, he's kind of tied into the whole Mississippi burning
Yeah,
story.
right.
This was in the 1960s,
Mhm.
where there was 3 civil rights workers that were killed by the Ku Klux Klan,
Mhm.
and the FBI couldn't figure out how they'd been killed or even find their bodies.
Right.
So they decided to bring the Grim Reaper down to Mississippi, uh, gave him a gun and some money, and said, "Go ahead and find out who the killers were."
Mhm.
And in the process, uh, he actually kidnapped one of the Klan members and tortured
Mhm.
him, and found out who it was.
Yeah, there was a little bit more. I was told that he did unspeakable things to them. That's the words that were used. And before he got to that final piece, he had to go through a few lower level Klansmen. So I don't think he was just brought to that guy because they probably, if they had to find out who that guy was, who knew. So he went to some lower level guys and did, like I said, unspeakable things. Ultimately, they got to the guy that had the goods. And what you just said is true. He took him in, threw him in the car, and I wouldn't want it to be him that night. I could tell you that.
Right, and he actually found out where the bodies
He
were,
found the bodies. Yep.
and
And
I guess in 2 years later, in '66, they brought him down to Mississippi again over another murder case over a fire that was set by the Klan.
yeah,
And I guess at that point things didn't quite work out because he wanted more money or something like that.
yeah. And there was I learned about that later on, obviously, and then he sort of backed away from them for a while. But I think that there's a little bit of a difference. I think before that historical moment, he backed away from the feds. He had dabbled with them before, but once he made those deals in Mississippi, he had carte blanche, and he was able to do whatever he wanted in the streets and never have to worry about being arrested. Carte blanche.
So here you are, you're messing with one of Greg's wives, and he's okay with it. And now you guys are becoming close. And now he is sort of bringing you into the whole criminal lifestyle and having you start to do various jobs for him. So how did that whole situation start?
Well, the first job I had with him, he put me in charge of a legitimate company that was a sales company that serviced fire extinguishers, sold products, cleaning products, paper products to any kind of business. So it was easy for us to get local restaurants and local stores just from his influence. So it started out good. Somewhere along the way, the corporation dissolved and the business went kaput. I don't know why. I understand there was a big explosion in one of the buildings, so maybe it turned out to be an insurance job. So now I'm in no man's land because I was early on. I was on the fire department test, and I had plans of doing that. Uh, but I did take the position. I was making money, and I thought I had a bright future. So now, once that does happen, Linda says, "Well, you got to do something for him. What are we going to do now? He has no money coming in." So he invites me into the numbers business, which is the lowest level of businesses in the rackets. It's just like the numbers you get in a 7-Eleven. You go and pick 3 numbers and they pay you. The only difference is we paid more and we always paid the right odds, where the state doesn't pay the right odds and they tax you. So they probably never make as much money as we did in that. But uh, so I started with that. And as I was doing the numbers, I now met people who were interested in gambling, so they sort of tied in together. So I started becoming a player in that business, and I was very improvising. I went to local OTBs, off track betting, and I recruited people to get numbers for me and I take their horse action, and I would pay track price where OTB didn't. So I was already good with numbers. So I started doing that. Eventually, the door opened to Shylocking. And the way that happens is somebody doesn't pay a sports debt. So they have to go borrow the money from Greg to pay me. And I get a piece of that interest each week. Then I became a Shylock on my own as time went on. Uh, so, yeah, the businesses, every day there was something going on. There was nothing he wouldn't do to earn. We had fake credit cards. We had fake tokens in the bridges and tunnels. That's a story. We were selling more tokens than the MTA in the city. And the mayor was up in arms over that, and they put police at the toll booths. It didn't work, and they were on the news one night, and finally they had to recall all the tokens and come out with a new system. And all the people that bought the tokens from us got beat. They never got their money back. But there was not, he had a little key that would get him in the phone booths. Remember the old days when there were phone booths every corner, drive down a major highway? He would drive with the guys up and down I-95 or the Garden State Turnpike, and just pulling into rest areas and opening up the phone booths and taking all the change. I mean,
Wow.
when Cabbage Patch dolls were in demand, they weren't on store shelves. We had a whole club full of Cabbage Patch dolls. People coming in for Christmas. So there was nothing he wouldn't do or the club didn't do to earn. But I was basically in those more, I would like to say, thinking rackets where you had to use your head with numbers and build up a business and a rapport with your clients.
Okay, but when you talk about gambling and shylocking and
Mhm.
so forth, you have degenerate gamblers
Mhm.
who are constantly betting
Right.
more than they have,
It happens.
and then they try to duck you, and you
Mhm.
have to, you can't just sue them or
Right.
or
No, you're right.
or go to a collection agency. You have to get the money back another way. So, was there violent experiences during that time?
Absolutely. And it's funny too because you're not thrust into that. You're watched, you're groomed. And then you get to a point where now you understand, okay? And you can't show weakness. So he would start me out with a small job. I'll give you one crazy example. I had to give a guy a flat tire once. Okay. He told me, gave me the ice pick to do it. Showed me the car. I thought nothing of it. I figured the guy parked in his spot or disrespected him somehow. So I go and I give him a flat tire. The next day in the newspaper, man killed fixing flat. He knows I saw that. He knows I know it, but it's unspoken. He wants to see if I come in nervous. I made like I didn't even know anything about it. Let it go. But I knew that was the first little inkling of something. But before that, there were some beatings. There were beatings, and typically they're personal. Somebody abused an old somebody's grandparent, and you got to teach this guy a lesson. So you go with his son and two other guys. So you think you're doing a good thing for the neighborhood. But to your point, what happens is now it's money. Now a guy owes money. It's a little different. It's extortion now. You're not beating a guy up because he disrespected somebody. And same thing there. You'll go with three or four other guys and they're going to report. Were you part of the beating? Did you stand off to the side? So you start getting acclimated, and you do. And later on, you justify it by something you said. If you owe a mortgage payment, the bank comes and takes your house. We can't do that. So we break your arm or your leg or worse. And some people prefer that. They'd rather recover from their broken arm and still own their house. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you're right. That was our method. We had to hurt people that didn't pay. And at the beginning, it was hard for me, but then it became, I hate to say it, second nature. It was almost like they caused it, not me.
Okay, and you start rolling with his son, Greg Jr.,
Greg Jr., yes.
who had his own crew of
Hmm.
lunatics, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. They were very capable crew.
Okay. Were you mostly around them or around
No,
Greg Sr.?
I was around Greg Sr., and Greg was going to put me directly with Greg Jr., and I get along with Greg Jr. to this day. We talk a lot. I'm trying to help him get some play and maybe get a little break and come home to die. He's in prison, but anyway, we were very close. We still are. But Linda would not allow him to put me with anybody but him. I had to go direct to him, which helped me along the way. I was going direct to the top of the pyramid. So, but yeah, Greg did have a crew of his own. Greg Jr.
Okay, and you refer to Greg Jr. as a stone cold killer.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to tell you, if I had to learn and I had to produce and I had to not show weakness and I was only like a son, imagine how he felt. He had to impress his father. Now, when I say that, I'm not trying to make it right for him or myself. I know what I did was not a very nice lifestyle. We know that. Most of us have come around and understand that. But when you're in it and you have a boss like Greg Scarpa, you cannot show weakness. Or a father like Greg Scarpa. He was even worse to his youngest son, Joey, my godson. Later on, we'll get to that.